In 1999, Brother Wayne Teasdale, who was a Catholic monk, had written a book that was entitled The Mystic Heart, Finding a Universal Spirituality in the World's Religions. And actually the core of that book was a prediction that throughout all the religious traditions in the world where what we might call either non-dual consciousness or awakened awareness or enlightenment, whatever word you want to use, that consciousness had arisen independently. And Wayne's compelling notion was that in this time, he actually said that one of the biggest works of this millennium was going to be a conversation between those people from those various traditions in which that same consciousness had arisen. And that having to do really with the oneness and interconnectedness of all reality and the fact that the real relationship is the resonance of the heart and doesn't really have anything to do except secondarily with concepts, beliefs, doctrine, history, and so on. And as many of you know, Wayne transitioned within about 3 or 4 years of that book. And there were many things that he had wanted to accomplish after the Mystic Heart. Particularly, he had wanted to see an international association come together to promote what he called interspiritual dialogue, which was this cross-talking across traditions where this same core of realization had arisen. A lot of us who had been in contact in Barcelona and through our friendships with Wayne got together and realized that the next step really needed to be a get-together of all the persons worldwide, at least who could gather in some place, who had been inspired by Wayne, and talk about what the future of that work was, even in Wayne's absence. So what happened was that the two founders of the Common Ground, the Crossings Retreat House in Austin, Texas, Joyce and Ken Beck, they had been working actually with Wayne and Father Thomas Keating and Gorakh Hayashi, who was one of Wayne's closest friends at Columbia College in Chicago. And they had done 2 programs at the Crossings, which they had called Common Ground. And these had been a beginning of the type of discussion that Wayne was anticipating and the type of discussion that we also were wanting to do in Barcelona. So what happened then was actually on the anniversary of September 11th in 2004, or was it 2005, 2000, whatever it was, 2005, we all gathered at the Crossings to discuss the future of that work. And that included Wayne's friends, his caregivers, his family, people from basically all of the various constituencies that he'd inspired.
I'm Joyce Beck, and this is my husband Ken. We're the co-founders of the Crossings, and we welcome every being here tonight. And I just want to thank so much Karen. Karen Drucker is going to be with us all weekend. She works with Joan Borysenko in Claritas, and we will be able to appreciate and experience this music all weekend long, huh? And so Karen is an inspirational singer, a songwriter. Her passion, as we already know, is chanting and singing healing music, which we've already started to experience. Her intent is to make a difference, and I think she's already made a difference. And so tonight we have a faculty that just is incredible. Ken and I are going to introduce the faculty, and I want to start with Gorakh, who is Bill Hayashi, right over here. His spiritual name is Gorakh, and he told me that when we use that spiritual name, it reminds him that he lives in grace. And I want to share with you that 2 years ago, Father Thomas Keating was here, Gorakh was here, Betty Sue was here, Joan Borysenko was here. 2 years ago, we had our first Common Ground. And then we did not have it last year because of Brother Wayne Teasdale's passing. But Brother Wayne Teasdale, who we are tributing through the entire weekend, he's our teacher, mentor, spiritual leader, and just an incredible spiritual being. And so we will be meeting. If you have not met Brother Wayne Teasdale, we have a film tonight that is just a brief one, and you'll meet him on film. But I want to share a little bit about Gorakh, because since January of this year, it was his idea that we would, who we would gather together for common ground. He has been working with the faculty since January. We have phone conversations, so many incredible meetings of each other, sharing about the New York group. And if people are here from New York, would you please raise your hand? And I just am so thrilled, and I so look forward to meeting every one of you and appreciate you being here. So Gorakh has been meeting with you, he's been meeting with faculty, he's been meeting with Chicago group. And who's here from Chicago? Chicago is here. And who's here from Texas? All right. Yeah. I'm just so excited. We are privileged to have this staff. And I thank Gorakh from the bottom of my heart for the energy, the love that he has given to this weekend. You'll be meeting, and he'll be part of the whole weekend. And so Ken's going to introduce Father Thomas and Betty Sue.
There's nothing left to say. Joy said it all. 2 years ago in September 5th of 2003, we opened the crossings. And at that opening weekend, we had some very memorable workshops. One of those being Common Ground, led by Brother Wayne Teasdale, and with the people just mentioned. And it's in his memory that this is going to carry on. It was his illness a year ago, and now he has passed on. But it's in his memory that we are going to do this entire weekend. It was an exciting weekend because we had Father Thomas Keating, who is here with us now as the founder of Centering Prayer, a practice that many of us have been studying and using in our own spiritual practices. And we're honored to have him back. In addition, Father Thomas was there, and Betty Sue Flowers, director of the Lyndon Baines Johnson Library here in Austin. She's also a professor at the University of Texas. She is a poet. She's a writer. She's just about everything. There's this term called Renaissance man, but I think it's Renaissance woman is Betty Sue, and she was part on the panel helping us take a look at dialogue between all the different faiths. And then even more exciting was there was another class going on that opening weekend. Joan was teaching here at the Crossings and teaching her own workshop. And yet as Common Ground was going on, and as she met Brother Wayne and talked with him a little bit, one afternoon she just invited her whole class into the Common Ground. And we experienced the whole thing together. And so it is so appropriate that Joan is a trained doctorate in medical sciences, as a psychologist, as someone who has been interested in the mind-body connection her entire life, brings that kind of a background to this incredible connection that took place 2 years ago. And then subsequently with her husband Gordon, they met Brother Wayne, participated in an interfaith dialogue weekend in Vancouver, and it is expanded from there to now the Claritas Institute in Boulder. And it is an institute in teaching people how to be interspiritual directors, interspiritual mentors. And so those are the leading faculty. We've got many more that we'll talk about, but in order of maintaining time, it's time to move on to the movie.
Ken is the timekeeper. It's wonderful. So, but before it is time for looking at the little clip that we have on Brother Dwayne, and he's speaking with Ken Wilber, and the name of it is the Supreme Identity, and so it takes us into the workshop. It really takes us in, and Brother Wayne is. When he was here 2 years ago, he wanted Common Ground to be here on an annual basis. And so tonight as we watch this supreme identity. It's just it's 10 minutes, and he gives us, we'll move right into it. Thanks.
In the Christian tradition, and I think also Sufism and the Jewish tradition, and I think in some of the Hindu schools, that crucial stage in the journey to union and communion and intimacy with the divine is a period of extreme desolation, because, as you say, you've glimpsed heaven, you've had that experience of God, and then the divine kind of withdraws it. But why is the divine doing that? Only so our will, our self-will, our self-grasping will dissolve. And then there's no obstacle to union. Again, what Eckhart said, for God to get in, the creature must get out. It's kind of blunt and crude to put it that way, but it gets...
You're out of here.
Right, yeah. You're out of here, that type of thing. And so many of the traditions emphasize that. Maybe all of them. I mean, in the Sufi tradition, the phonic consciousness, phana, which is annihilation of the self, annihilation of the autonomous, egoic, or false self. So that enlightenment is a total process of awareness, but also letting go of the self. I think that's why Jesus said, if you would find your true self, you must lose yourself. You must lose that self-grasping, egoic consciousness.
He who hateth not his own soul cannot be a follower of mine.
Yeah,
and that would be a very confusing statement to most Christians.
Yeah, it would be. It would be.
You say, soul, creature, out of here.
Right. There can't be any autonomous kind of little program aside from God's. That's really what it means.
And you set aside a little bit you're going to save for yourself.
Yeah.
Your autonomy. You're like, okay, he won't see this.
He won't see this. He won't see this. Yeah. And I think the best of meditation practice goes to the root of our motivation.
Yeah.
And the roots are found in the unconscious, in seeds of motivation we may not even be aware of.
Yeah.
They're affecting our attitudes, our disposition, our conscious goals, and everything has got to be given over. I think of the poet Eliot, costing precisely everything. Can't hold anything back. Remember when I was a novice some years ago, one of the masters, novice masters, we had two. One who taught us spirituality and the other one who taught us the rules of the life and so forth. And the one who taught us spirituality, Father Dave, was a very holy man. And he said very much in the Spanish mystical tradition, John and Teresa. And he would say, never give yourself to God in one great act of self-donation, because inevitably you'll end up taking yourself back bit by bit. You know? And in youthful idealism, you get onto a path and all of a sudden you immediately give yourself to God. But then as you go along, you realize, well, I'm not so sure about this. I need to go, explore this a little more, and so forth. You have to be sure. And I think a meditation practice, or any gutsy practice that gets at those roots and inspires your will to surrender, will bring about a fundamental change in the unconscious, where those seeds of motivation you'll become aware of them, and then you can let them go. You can transcend them.
It's like we're saying that the subject becomes an object.
Yeah.
So there is only absolute subject.
Until there's only absolute subject. Yeah. Absolute subject. And that statement you made about the deepest part of ourselves is one with God, John of the Cross puts it even stronger. He says at some point, now I know, and many other mystics say this, now I know that in the deepest part of myself, my deepest self is God.
Yeah.
The creature must get out if God is to get in.
Yeah, and you're allowed to say it at that intersection.
At that intersection, which is the same thing as aham brahmasmiti.
Absolutely.
I am Brahman.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fine line. Often it has to be walked in the exoteric religions.
Right.
East or West, frankly.
Mm-hmm.
But that line about, even in the Gospels, as I recall, at one point they say, Christ says, why are you stoning me for bad works? And they say, not for bad works, no, but for blasphemy, because you, being a man, make yourself out God.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the supreme identity is a very delicate, difficult thing to understand and convey, because people always misunderstand it.
Right.
As you think, you, Ken Wilber, are God, or you, Wayne, are God. That's not what we're saying.
Yeah.
That's certainly not what the mystics are saying.
No.
And so it gets very confusing.
It's very confusing.
Be very, very careful about that.
Yeah, and that's why Al-Halaj got in trouble. He was very blunt. He was very poetic.
I am the truth.
I am the truth. Yeah, and in these robes is only Allah.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, he was right.
Yeah.
He was absolutely right, and that was a statement of great humility.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't an ego thing with him.
No, that's the bizarre, that's what's so misunderstood.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be 100% humble to be able to say that with any sort of authenticity.
Right.
But then not to say that is false humility.
Of course.
And that's the pullback.
Because it's really God who's saying it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're denying God if you can deny it. You're denying that statement. And usually 3 times before the cock crows.
Right, exactly. Yes. Yes. Definitely.
Just want to give you a minute for people who haven't seen Brother Wayne. You know, yes, yeah, just to take that in, experience him again, and remember. And his skill at taking us to that deep place within where we meet God within. That's what this weekend is going to be about. Tonight, tomorrow, looking first through experience how we meet God within. Who is that mystic within? And really, our whole focus is on the experience and the sharing of that. So the first look is at the individual, personal, your own personal experience with God. And then we're going to move into sharing and playing and co-creating and with Joan and Karen, and Father Thomas is going to be leading us in centering prayer. So from this whole experience, we want to be moving towards action. As we learn about our God within, as we learn about interspirituality, what that means to us, how do we move out then in action? And so that's what this workshop's going to be about this weekend. And right now I'd like to ask Gorakh to introduce Josie.
Wayne said to me, really about 3 weeks before that first Common Ground, Bill, you have to come to Common Ground. You have to meet the Becks. They share the vision. And when Wayne said things in that tone, it was an invitation, it was a command. So I surrendered, and I'm so glad I did. Yes. Josie Evans, who was a very dear friend of Wayne's, is here tonight.
I'm Josie Evans. I'm very honored to be here. I just want to tell you a little bit about when Wayne went to be with Ken Wilber. We were flying home from Vancouver. That was the last time that Wayne actually publicly spoke. And about a week before he was to go to this multi-faith conference, a 5-day conference, he had asked me about 6 weeks before that he wanted to go, and his energy level wasn't in a real good space. Then about a week before he called and he said, I really want to go to Vancouver. And like you were saying, Bill, you do it. And so anyway, I got tickets and I got him there. We actually had to fly into Seattle because there were no more flights to Vancouver. So we drove up to Vancouver. And he keynoted, and Joni was the MC for this multi-faith retreat and workshop that His Holiness the Dalai Lama came to. And none of us knew that that was going to be the last time that Wayne spoke publicly. And Wayne had this ability where the divine just flowed through him and out into his words. He was always transformed when he spoke. And then there was the regular Wayne, who was, just this incredibly tangible, touchable human being, which shared his incredible essence for interspirituality. But every time he got up to speak, there was a transformation about him that always was remarkable. It was miraculous. So anyway, we're flying home. We drive back to Seattle. We're flying home, and he goes, I know that I told Guy Petrocelli, who was his palate surgeon, that I was going to see him the day after I came home. But I'm going to see Ken Wilber first. And so literally, we flew home, I think it was a Tuesday. He flew back out to Denver on a Friday, spent all weekend filming these precious films. And then he came home. I took him to see Guy Petrocelli on Tuesday, and Guy admitted him immediately and did the surgery that night. So Wayne knew that he needed this opportunity to go to Denver. So I just kind of wanted to share with you. And he just looks so, he's just radiating on this. I've not seen it. It was my first time to see this. And he's just radiating. This was a gift that Wayne gave to us the last day that he was in his apartment. And he was thrilled because my son, Brett, wanted to put it in his room. And it's actually a statue of St. Francis that is underwater in Florida. And somehow it also kind of reminds me of Wayne. The light is coming up, and we're getting all those bubbles that are just coming up, with the spirit within all of us. And so anyway, this will also be out there. It's just a very special, I've never seen anything quite like it, and I didn't know that this statue existed. But anyway, it was very special to Wayne, so I wanted to bring that along as well. Thank you very much.
So I first met Wayne in Trent, Italy, at a weekend dialogue called Synthesis 2 with a number of religious leaders from around the world and His Holiness, the Dalai Lama. And my first introduction to Wayne was, wow, what an enormous brain and an understanding of the interspiritual traditions, the mystic heart that underlies all traditions. But the second thing I noticed about Wayne is, wow, what a joker. He was just so much fun. Wayne loved jokes, which were not all funny jokes, but what it was just a playfulness inside him. And it was so easy to see how playfulness and spirituality really are expressions of curiosity. They're expressions of spirit. They're expressions of spontaneity and presence. And now I think I'm going to cry because, I think of Wayne's great innocence and his great beauty and the little seed he dropped, which so inspired Gordon and me. And that was, he said, we have to move toward creating a civilization with a heart. And everything unfolds from the coming together of the good heart, the dropping of the mask, and the plain old enjoyment of the moment.
Oscar is going to lead us. There you are. Yes. Oscar is a shaman from Peru, and I think he will share with us about how he works with cross-cultural shamanism. He'll share with us. But what the role is to create sacred space for us and to hold the sacred space. And so he will do this now and then in the closing, and we'll explain how throughout the weekend we're holding sacred space together.
May our prayers go out to all those who have not yet found a living sanctuary such as these circles. May we be as magnets to their welcoming. Let us tone the directions one time each, please. If you don't remember them, just resonate with their vibratory frequency, please. Let us inhale.
Thank you, Oscar. Yes, and Meda, who is Gorakh's assistant, is going to lead us in an exercise. And just a little background on Meda, that she's a book illustrator and owner of Radiant Illustration. And this also owns Animal Passages and specializes in animal communication. I think it's her passion. So, Meda will lead us.
When I started to think about the conference and people coming from so many different places, doing so many different kinds of work, one of the things that came to me was I wanted to make an offering to the conference before I got there and begin my preparation in that way. And what usually happens with my artwork is I'll start having images come in for me. And the images that came for this Common Grounds conference was the eagle and the condor. And I began to check the story of the eagle and the condor a little bit and found that it's really the bringing together of the higher mind, the eagle and spirit, and the condor, which is the Mother Earth and the heart. Those two images, and this is on a level of personal symbology for me, mean to me the bringing together of heart and mind, as I said, but also it's the union of the masculine and the feminine, and in each person, and in their individual sky. So that's why I created it.
So let's begin, and let's begin with our bodies. Be in this body and be present here. The place that we're in is the place that we're always in. We're in the dream time. Waking or sleeping, we're always dreaming. We're always present in this place. So now bring your awareness to a time when you experienced spirit, when you felt the presence of spirit in your being. And let yourself re-enter that experience. For a moment, just think of what your intention is in terms of your service and wanting to serve the world dream. Just feel that intention, the intention of your heart, the purpose that you're here for in this workshop.
We open with a quotation. We must create a society in which a person does not have to betray inner sensitivity, inner essence. Vimala Thakur, an Indian social and political activist in the spirit of Gandhi and the author of The Eloquence of Living, challenges us to enlarge our vision of society to encompass an authentic vision of our true selves. Often, our present society tramples on sensitivity. Our inclinations toward love and mercy are compromised by the competition and materialism that rule our world. Our society forces us to betray our nature in order to conform and get ahead. In truth, our inner sensitivity is grounded in a caring heart, or the good heart, as the Tibetans say. All of us share this deeper nature, which becomes obscured by the demands of our fast-paced, anonymous, indifferent culture. as much as we can, we have to be true to ourselves, even without the cooperation of social systems. As much as we can, we have to be true to ourselves, even without the cooperation of social systems. This inner essence is our gift to one another. It is part of the divine's presence in us. Words from Brother Wayne Teasdale.
We're going to move from here to Martha Howard, who is a caretaker, was a caretaker for Wayne, Brother Wayne, and she's a physician and has an alternative health center. And she's going to, if you could just come up, Martha.
I'm going to read Wayne's, one of the things he sent me that was on my computer. He used to send me things at 11 o'clock at night for planes he had to make to edit, for planes that he had to make at 9 the next morning. So I think this was one of them. And I looked through in his books and I didn't find this. And so here it is. It's called Transforming Evil Through Love. If we can learn to embrace the diversity and otherness we encounter here and heal the ancient divisions and misunderstandings of the past, if we can give and accept forgiveness, always choosing the path of non-harming in relation to all humankind, other sentient beings, and the natural world, then we will have come of age as a species, and our spirituality will have prepared us for the next steps in our cosmic spiritual evolution, steps that will inevitably lead us into a larger identity in the divine mystery and greater responsibility in our area of the universe. As the human family, each one of us has to stretch beyond self-interest or the concerns of simply our family, friends, community, religion, or culture, nation, and species, and think more in terms of the whole community of life on earth. Tribalism and nationalism must give way to our larger identity closely linked to the earth and the greater community of the cosmos itself. I have witnessed the growth of sensitivity and compassion, love, mercy, and kindness in persons who have accepted the invitation with heroic generosity of nature to walk in the ways of spiritual discipline, the timeless wisdom of the inner life, the mystical journey. This path opens our hearts to quantum leaps of love and compassion, founded on an ever-expanding sensitive awareness of others and otherness in its broader sense. The spiritual journey, wherever it is lived, is an infallible means of transformation into an exquisite human being, one with the gift of that wisdom we call awareness, the deep existential realization of the interconnectedness of all sentient beings. Such individuals, which are all of us when finally awake, radiate love and forgiveness. Their presence in every situation heals, transforms, while disarming hostility, confusion, ambiguity, and indifference. Confronting evil, injustice, violence, and tragedy, they maintain the essential perspective of wisdom, the awareness of the larger picture, the absoluteness of love. They call others through their witness and presence to consider this larger reality that is often obscured in the heat of violence, shouting matches, and war. If in the face of those who are destructive, we are consistently loving, compassionate, and wise, while doing what must be done to protect the innocent, we will eventually have a transformative impact on them. They will realize that there's something beyond hatred and violence, the nihilistic behavior of immature souls who perhaps don't know anything better. Allen Ginsberg, in a brief poem, characterizes the awake person and his view is universally valid. The poet utters, "Holy is the supernatural, extra brilliant, intelligent kindness of the soul." Kindness is of the essence in spiritual realization, in the nature of awareness itself. And this is our ultimate treasure, which becomes a resource for substantial personal and social change. The Dalai Lama tells us that his religion is kindness, as to both practice and fruit. And he concludes with a prayer which says, "This came to him one morning some years ago as he was coming out of a deep contemplative meditation. O Blessed One, transform us, all humanity, into the boundless love you are, and let us always radiate this love to you, to one another, and to all those we meet, including other sentient beings, unto eternal life." This prayer is both an intention and a practice that incarnates the intention in the center of our awareness. May this practice, this intention, take root in us all and lead us into greater freedom, generosity, and change, culminating in a new human order, a civilization with a heart.
Wayne's idea of the civilization with a heart, for me, it resonates with my Sufi tradition, which is the path of the heart, the path of the mystic. And, looking at his book, A Mystic's Journey, the heart of the journey, the heart of that mystic, what I want to do is coming from my heart of hearts. And it is a journey of the heart, which for us in our tradition, or for me personally, means the truth, the absolute truth of who I am and what I've come here to do.
Just bottom line, what this civilization of heart is that it just has to come out of love, and to a recognition that we all have kind of an essence which is the same. The essence is of light, of wisdom, of love, of generosity, and that that once we can let go of these concepts of difference and also of scarcity, we can really co-create just an amazing civilization. And really, it's really coming from the space of the heart, where there are no differences.
But one of the things that was said by many, many people that knew Wayne, and people who'd been inspired by Wayne, and people who really, and myself being an example, and many others, who Wayne had intervened in their life and put them really on another course, was that you couldn't be around Wayne without a sense of the imperative. That was the word they used, and it's a great word. The imperative of what he felt about this realization. He talked to us once about writing the parts of the mystic heart that had to do with this international association of folk who could speak from the non-dual awareness. And he said he literally had been in his cell meditating, and this just came to him, and he ran to his word processor, and out all this stuff came. But he believed in his gut, even at the time that he was so ill, that this was a major work of what was going on in consciousness. Not connected to him per se as anybody, but just him being one of the people being aware of this universal intention that many, many people are aware of. And he was unbelievably connected to that, to the point that Gorakh reports that he was very, very reluctant in a lot of ways to transit, because he felt there was so much that had not been done. And so there's a lot of us who were close to him, who knew him, and particularly conversations that we had with him, let's say, in the period that he was really too ill to write anymore. There's a lot of stuff that we really need to get down, talk about, and so on. But so I think if, whatever we understand about life in the higher dimensions, other dimensions, whatever, obviously Wayne has been working from that arena since.
Each of us has a different part in unfolding a civilization with a heart. For me, I think a very large part of it is the capacity to listen deeply and without judgment to ourselves, to other people. And the interesting thing, we've got Father Thomas Keating at this conference, and he, of course, is a master of contemplation. And when you think of what really is contemplation, it sounds like it's a mind thing, but it's a heart thing. It has a big thing to do with a civilization, with a heart. Because contemplation is being present to the moment-by-moment unfolding of experience as it's happening, without all the judgment getting in the way. And, when you sit with someone, you sit with somebody, it could be an old friend, it could be a new friend, and you really sit with them as a contemplative practice, just being with them, being present to them, opening your heart to them. It is absolutely amazing what you see. That act of seeing and being seen, of giving and receiving, just unfolds everything. And then people's best, most spontaneous self comes through. You see each other, truly. And it's amazing the spark that passes, sometimes the kinds of actions that you can dream together, because you come from such a place of deep respect. And for me, spiritual development is all about enlarging the circle of our concern, enlarging the circle of our compassion. And that's what a civilization with a heart is going to look like.
Father Thomas Keating is one of the architects of the centering prayer movement and of contemplative outreach, or contemplative outreach. He is its spiritual guide. Centering prayer, also known as contemplative prayer, is explained as follows. In solitude and silence, we come to know and live from the divine mystery within us. At the heart of the Christian tradition is silent communion with God. In silence, our true relationship with God manifests, transforming ourselves, our lives, our relationships with others, and with all creation. Through the practice of centering prayer, the contemplative dimension of the gospel manifests itself in individuals by increasing capacity to live ordinary life with extraordinary love, with God as the source and center of life. Father Thomas Keating.
I might just point out that I've known Wayne since the early 70s or even farther back. And he practiced centering prayer somewhere from after 1975, when it was first put together, until his death. And so we often talked about that and his experience. So personally, I feel that much of his wisdom and gifts are the fruit of that fidelity to daily silence, interior silence. So this morning we're just having a period of concentering prayer that I'll lead us into. And so the teacher at this part of our gathering is going to be silence, not me. Silence is probably the greatest of teachers. In any case, centering prayer is not an end in itself, but a discipline of mind and heart that leads into the Christian contemplative experience. In the full sense of the word, John of the Cross calls it contemplation in this sense, total receptivity. It's our spiritual will that is being cultivated at this level, in which through repeated acts of opening to God's presence and mystery within us, to the ground of our being, the ultimate source of our being, whatever your particular tradition might label the ultimate reality. This presence is released in us over time, and fidelity to the practice. And out of that listening, assimilation, and being assimilated by the ultimate mystery, action becomes more effective and is liberated from the limiting aspects of our false selves. So the formula, the centering prayer, follows is found in Matthew 6:6, where Jesus says in this wisdom saying in the Sermon on the Mount, if you wish to pray, enter your inner room, close the door, and pray to your Father in secret. And your Father who is in secret will reward you. Notice the 3 stages of this formula. External silence, letting go of our ordinary psychological awareness, which is preoccupied with the cares and news and turmoil of everyday life. And then Jesus suggests closing the door. This isn't just an exhortation to stick it out till the end of our agreed upon interview. But it suggests turning off what Castaneda called so appropriately the interior dialogue. This is that conversation with ourselves that goes on night and day, 24 hours a day. That is our commentary on people and events entering and leaving our lives and our emotional reactions to it. So it's sometimes noisier than living next to a compressor. So to let go of all our commentaries suggests entering into this level of silence that might be called stillness. It suggests letting go of our expectations for this interview with the mystery within us and within everyone else. It's not having any expectations for peace, consolation, to make the mind a blank, which would be psychologically harmful, or to have no thoughts. It's the openness to accept whatever the psychological content of the moments of prayer might turn out to be. So it's a giving of our inmost being to the mystery of life and its source. The third step is even more profound. Notice silence, stillness, and then to pray in secret. The essence of prayer is relationship with the ultimate mystery. And so at this level of secrecy, there is a letting go of self-reflection itself, so that the self-conscious self is forgotten. Ever-present awareness that Ken Wilber speaks about in one of his books, in describing non-duality, is not really awareness at all. It's just presence. So the secrecy that Jesus invites us to here is the silence of self. This is the movement towards being, a letting go of doing in order just to be. So it's a letting go even of our self-identity as an attachment. So it's a movement into no fixed point of reference for what we have come to know as ourselves. Radical conversion. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Amen. Now I would like to introduce Gorakh, who will help us to discern how to bring silence into activity.
So let's once again just feel your inner presence. This is the place of silence. This is the abode of the divine. O Spirit, what is my unique gift to offer unto the world? Actually, I'm realizing more and more that my gift, my intention, my hope is to bring forth the greatness in one another. So this is perfect. This is perfect. Because this is another thing that I really wanted to emphasize, that so often there are the spiritual people and then there are the activists, the people who have vision and the people who get things done. And I really wanted to make sure that this is a place where, as my friend Yasuhiko Kimura says, vision without action is lame. Action without vision is blind. And so I really wanted to provide an opportunity for people both to go inside and really identify as clearly as possible what it felt like to be empowered by Spirit, what their particular spirit gift was, what their dharma, what they want to offer to the planet, and then also what some specific projects that they could really focus on over the next year as a way of actually bringing this dream into reality, into manifestation. And so that was the way the conference was structured, to begin with vision, and then by the end, for everyone to have some project that they really wanted to unfold, manifest. And what was great was that as we were sharing these different experiences and rituals, people's energy really supported one another's, and so even though it was your particular symbol, your particular vision, somehow you felt that it was also coming out of this deeper pool of energy and of consciousness and of passionate service. So I really felt like it really came together.
We are different ages, our faith has just begun. We are men and we are women, but we breathe as one, as one, as one, but we breathe as one, as one, as one, but we breathe as one. See if you can remember it and sing it along.
We are different ages.
We are different
Our faith
ages.
has just begun.
Our faith has just begun.
We are men and we are women.
We are men and we are women. But we breathe as one. Breathe as one. Breathe as one. But we breathe as one. As one. As one. But we breathe as one.
has just begun.
We are men, we are women.
We are men and we are women. But we breathe as one. As one. As one. But we breathe as one. As one. As one. But we breathe as one. As one. As one. But we breathe as one.
Love that.
That just happened, you two? In the they created it.
Let me just say that what happened in the poetry group was phenomenal, and Gorakh opened the space for people to begin to explore the spirit calling and the call of spirit and the gift that was in each. And when all were done and we heard these exquisite pieces of heart that came out in words from these people, at the end we took one line from one poem which seemed to describe and exemplify the spirit of all that we were, and that line is, when I knew I was nothing, that was truth. When I knew I was everything, that was love.
The bridge transition is the prose group, where one person did a prose piece in memory of Wayne. So that's what we'll end this part on. And with no further ado, Joan will take it from there. But I don't see her. There she is. Come up here and then hand this to Joan. Well, a small disclosure, I wrote this over lunch and not in our group, and I saw Joan afterward, and I told her that I was thinking of the things that she taught us in our prose group, and that's why I am here. She grabbed me. But one of the things was that in describing effective writing, you need a good lead. And so, just in case you might miss it, I'm going to point out to you what that is. So, it's this first sentence. This is a tribute to Brother Wayne, but also to Father Thomas. I grew up Protestant and left the church when I left home at 18. In my 30s, I slowly began an explicitly spiritual journey. Returning to Christianity did not occur to me because I had come to let the religious right define Christianity, and I was not on the same page with them either theologically or politically. So I looked eastward and quickly found the instruction of the Dalai Lama. He said, paraphrasing, "Look within your own religious tradition. It's all there." But the exclusivist claim of too many Christians continued to put me off, despite the fact that many of the Christians that I personally knew and the Christian leaders that I was listening to made no such claims. One of those leaders was Father Thomas. I went to one of your centering prayer retreats, and when the invitation to the Eucharist was extended, I asked an attendant, who was in full Catholic garb, "Are non-Christians welcome to participate?" He studied for a moment and then responded, "All God's children are welcome." That and numerous other clear indications of openness encouraged me to continue along the Christian path. Then on December 18th, 2002, at about 2 a.m., while reading Brother Wayne's A Monk in the World, I became a Christian, or as I prefer to say, I adopted the Christian narrative. So the work of Father Wayne and others in insisting on the common ground, rather ironically, helped clear my path to Christianity, in which I found a profoundly meaningful tradition and deeply caring community. So thank you, Brother Wayne.
I'll give you the lesson I was taught. No jargon ever. Speak from your heart and talk about something that was really real for you so that other people will be able to say, this is real for me too. And when you write, there are 4 parts of writing. There's the famous lead that Emily talked about, and that's spelled L-E-D-E. It took me 6 months before I finally said, what do you mean when you say lead? Is it actually the lead? Fortunately, it was, because that's what I thought. But it's something that really catches people, where there is unity and diversity, where they say, your story is my story too. That it catches me in the heart because I'm human. Then the second part of writing good prose is what they call the nut graph. That is rather odd. We used to, in abnormal psychology, we had nut graphs of different sorts. But this is the nut of what you're trying to say. In other words, a reader is always trusting you with their time, and they're trusting you with their heart. So it's your promise. If you read this, here's the promise. You'll learn something about gratitude. You'll learn something about faith. You'll learn something about what it means to be fully human. So that's the nut graph. Then you get to part 3, which is the substance. And the idea is make 2 or 3 points that someone might be able to remember. And then the 4th part is the summation of it all, the honorable, catchy closure that people will remember and that people will feel somehow deeply in their body. Whether they're visual or whether they're oriented toward play or whether they're oriented toward words, everybody can feel in their body emotions. It's where we meet. It's part of the unity and diversity. And so your closure comes from that. But I'm wondering if there might be one more of you who would be willing to share.
Sitting in the movie theater, watching the film Hotel Rwanda, took me back to my childhood when I fled Uganda with my family during the genocide. I know, known as the killing fields of Africa. I couldn't stop crying during the film, and I felt my heart was stuck in my throat. With a huge gulp, I swallowed my heart in that moment. The heart said to me, this is not about you, but about your brothers and sisters you left behind. Who couldn't get out of the country, who gave their lives for us, and whose children became orphans. This is about your life's mission. What have you done since you've come to this wealthy country, and by getting a good education and accumulating personal wealth? What have you done for my orphans of Uganda? What will you do now that you have swallowed your heart, in which lies your mission of bringing hope, inspiration, knowledge, trust, faith, and the know-how of teaching people how to fish for a lifetime so they may overcome hopelessness? When will you go back home to the orphans of the killing fields of Africa? That is when I confirm to God that I, as his emissary, as his instrument, commit to doing all that I can to build the Codes of Success schools for human potential in Uganda so I may bring hope,
inspiration, and knowledge, the light of God to the orphans who will illuminate the world. I now realize why I was able to flee Uganda and come to America, and why I am in radio and television, and why God has given me all of his gifts so I may serve my brothers and sisters in Uganda as generously as I have been served, so I may love and be compassionate with myself and with my brothers and sisters, so I may understand that in the tragedy there were seeds of great hope and inspiration.
Thank you, Naleen. You know, this room is filled with beautiful and extraordinary beings. But it's very hard to segue into play when your heart is still in your throat and you're thinking about all the suffering in the world. But do you know what? All the great beings who transform suffering are actually very playful. Have you ever noticed that? You look at the Dalai Lama and you think about what it was that he suffered, the Holocaust of his people, the exile from their land. And yet every time you see him, he's twinkling. And you wonder, what is the secret of that twinkle? So it was must have been about 2001 that I had my first real encounter with play and spiritual activism with the Dalai Lama and with Wayne. We were at a conference called the Synthesis 2 Dialogues in Trent, Italy. And we came together. There were, people from a variety of different religious traditions, and we were there to just talk about whatever we were talking about, interspiritual kinds of things. And several things really stuck out about that encounter. First of them was how incredibly playful Wayne was. For those of you who didn't know him, Wayne had this incredible transparent innocence. He was absolutely transparent. There wasn't any ego there. And because of that, he just wasn't afraid to have fun and to be funny. And he loved telling jokes. He found his match in T.C., who, as you know, yesterday was the Dalai Lama's brother. And the two of them together could have written a book of worst jokes ever told. But that didn't matter because everybody laughed anyhow. Because what's funny is not the joke itself, but the transparency of the person telling it. And the fact that they're so delighted with the joke that they want to share it with you. And that's often why one person tells a joke and it's so funny, and somebody else repeats it, and it's totally different. Because it's the person who shines through. Because when you think about, here we are, each of us really a kind of prism of oneness, a reflection of the living God. What's that reflection? Love and creativity. We're always creating, always manifesting, always bringing what is new and what is alive and what touches each other. And play is the way of doing that. Through the years, I've had a lot of different jobs. I've been in academia. I've been a psychologist. I've, done this and that. And I can tell you that any time I was part of a group that had a good idea that changed the world, they were having fun when they cooked it up. It's absolutely true. There was a lot of laughter, because laughter is what cracks the ego wide open. We all know how it is that we acquire an identity, we massage that identity, we're attached to that identity, and we can't even see it anymore. But one thing I think we all know is that the attachment to parts of our identity is what actually prevents spirit from moving through us and prevents the expression of our gifts. Because up comes stuff like, the worthless worm complex, which says you're really not good enough. I can speak about this because it's been something that I've dealt with all my life. And what happens is suddenly I don't think I can do the things that I've signed up to do, and it gets in the way. And one of the best ways of cognitive therapy is actually humor. to take something and exaggerate it to the point where it's so ridiculous that even you recognize you're ridiculous. How many of you know Loretta LaRoche? Anybody? So few of you do. She's done 5 specials on public television. She's a humorist. And she's a good friend of mine. And I call Loretta Her Holiness the Jolly Lama, because she is absolutely a riot. And what she's doing is good positive psychology. What her byline is this. She says, life's a joke and you're it. And there's truth in that. If you begin to look at your own mind, you begin to see you're your own entertainment center. You don't need anything outside of yourself with all of its repetitive stuff. So Karen is going to lighten us up. How are you liking Miss Karen, by the way?
Thank you. I'm going to sing you a song. I'm going to sing you a song because I think that there might be some problem with all of us being so enlightened and wanting to just... Well, let me ask you this. Are there any whiners in the audience? Not winos, whiners. So I was a professional whiner for years. I made my living as a blues singer in San Francisco, and I had a great time because I would be able to sit on a stool in these little bars in San Francisco and whine and get paid for it. And I would sing these songs like My Man Done Left Me, I'm Throwing Myself Off the Golden Gate Bridge, and Don't Try and Stop Me on the Way Down, in the key of B flat. It was really wonderful. And I would just be able to whine all night long. But the problem is when I started to get on this path of taking responsibility and enlightenment, I started to find that I couldn't sing these songs anymore. But I thought, well, if I write my own, I can do it all. So I decided to do something, let's see here, that kind of combines it all. May I whine to you? I woke up this morning, something was not right. My poor head was a-throbbing 'cause I tossed and turned all night. Well, this unfamiliar feeling, it kind of shook me up inside, 'cause the truth it was revealing that a part of me had died. So I called my higher self, and she gave me the bad news. She said, your life is just so good, you lost the right to sing the blues. That broken down old Chevy that was eating me alive. Well, honey, I visualized a Lexus, and now it's sitting in my drive. And that man of mine, that scoundrel, that rotten low-down bum, I transformed him into a love god with a sizable trust fund. And everywhere I looked, I was confronted with the clues that my life was just so good, I lost the right to sing the blues. Now, you can sing the blues if you can't pay your rent. And you can sing the blues if your money has all been spent. But how can I sing the blues? I ain't got no excuse when I'm driving in my Porsche on the way to my masseuse. So you won't find me wailing late at night in some smoky bar, and you won't see me crying tears into my old guitar. Honey, I am too busy cleaning my chakras and chasing bad karma away and fluffing up my aura. Well, it takes Joni at least, all day. Now that I am enlightened, I've got to spread the news. When life gets this darn good, you lost the right to sing the blues. So now you've heard my story, and you understand the pain of searching and not finding any reason to complain. 'Cause my stars are in alignment, and my house is all feng shuied, and I'm filled with peace and harmony, and my bills have all been paid. I've let go of my struggles, 'cause I've paid my dues. When life gets this darn good, you lost the right to sing the blues. Yes, I've lost that right. Yes. Thank you.
Do lighten up, and then we'll get to groups and have a break.
We have a routine. I was walking down the street, I was feeling mighty fine, till I caught a glimpse in a window of my behind. there was a jiggle and a wiggle that I'd never seen before. And as I looked a little closer, oh my God, I found more. I freaked out and I shrieked out, well, this has just ruined my day. When I heard a voice inside of me say, lighten up, that's your part. Don't take it so seriously. Lighten up, just trust the mystery. Lighten up, it doesn't matter anyway. Just enjoy your life. Get out of your own way. Lighten up. Here's the most important thing for me. No worrying and judging, what good does it do? When you compare yourself to me, then I compare myself to you. This disease to please has just got to go. 'Cause when I love myself, honey, that's all I need to know. Lighten up. So I'm declaring right here and right now, I'm going to lighten up. Will you join me? 'Cause it feels so good to lighten up. Please welcome Astara.
Thank you. Well, here we are, all together again. Let's all just start this evening with some deep breaths into our bellies so that we're really connecting with the energy of the feminine, which is our body, because our body is made of the same elements as the earth. So our body is our gateway, and it's our portal for this divine union and for the energies of the Divine Mother and the Divine Father to manifest and express on this dimension.
These are the gifts of the Spirit, love, joy, and peace. Gifts of the Spirit, are you ready to receive all the gifts of the Spirit? Love, joy, and peace. Gifts of the Spirit, are you ready to receive love? These are the gifts of the Spirit, love, joy, and peace. Gifts of the Spirit, I am ready to receive all the gifts of the Goddess. Talk about love, joy, and peace. Gifts of the Goddess, I am ready to receive. Yes, I am ready to receive. I am ready to receive. Astara.
At the call, says the book of Revelation, be courageous and discipline yourself. Be courageous and discipline yourself. Work Keep digging your well. Work. Keep digging your well. Don't think of getting off from work. Water is there somewhere. Submit to a daily practice. Your loyalty to that is a ring on the door. Keep knocking, keep knocking. The joy inside will eventually open a window and look to see who's there. The practice in Sufism involves 4 stages. First is the Sharia, which is the dogma, the doctrine. Then we have the Tariqah, or Tariqat, which is the path. Then we have Hakika, or Hakikat, which is the truth. And then we have Marifah, which is union. We go then to Fana Fillah, annihilation, and then to Baka Billah, which is, as was mentioned earlier, losing the self. And Mansur al-Halaj said it very well, An al-Haq, I am the truth, and lost his life for that. And if you know the story of Shamsh and Rumi, when Shamsh asked God, what will you give me? If I give you what you want, I will give you my life. So as a Dai, as a Fidai, and the way we practice, our life is his. And we have a relationship between the beloved and the lover. It's very private. We call it the sir, the secret, which is in the heart of hearts. It's in the chamber. So, like I said, now the Sufi zikr goes this way. La ilaha illallah. There is no God but God. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. Allah. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah.
Words from Brother Wayne Teasdale. Interspirituality is about identifying and embracing the mystical core or common ground of the world's religions. Finding and celebrating this common ground is one of the great spiritual undertakings of our time, both to counter the terrible abuse of religious thought for the purpose of religion, and to help us recognize that all the religions point to one ultimate goal: our personal realization of the mystical truth underlying all reality.
Wayne loved to walk and talk. He was perpetually late and perpetually flatulent. Who didn't walk with Wayne? And experienced that in this crowd. I loved that he always took the kind view of people. He often avoided situations that were tense in community, and yet he was an animator in community and a great storyteller. He knew church history through the stories of people he'd personally met. He'd tell a lot of stories of Uncle John, who earlier lived at 100 Acres with him, and where Wayne had cared for him at the end of his life. I remember Wayne always making his point with his hands, making gestures and being animated. If he liked somebody, which was almost always, he elevated that person. He or she was brilliant in Wayne's eyes. Wayne was one with animals. He often asked me how members of my family were, and then ended with a question about our cat, Pedro, who he later mentioned in one of his books as part of our community. He knew and could relate to all, no matter where or how he knew them. He made you feel like a sacred gift the moments you were with him. I opened his mail and read him letter upon letter of gratitude of how he'd touched people's lives, if even for a few moments. In those moments, I felt deep pride in Wayne in that he was my cousin and beloved son of Uncle John, deeper than ever. We shared stories of my grandma and his sister, Uncle John, some of whom I never heard.
Toward the end of Wayne's life, we had the opportunity to go to Assisi, Italy, because Wayne and I used to talk about this from all the time. It's like to go to the home, the birthplace of Francis. And so it was very timely. It was, 2003, and this was the year just prior to Wayne, having the cancer return. So Wayne was actually going to be having his vows received by Cardinal George in Chicago, and this was really a culmination, I think, for Wayne, because for many, many years, his home was really within the Catholic Church. I mean, this was his identity, even though he had such a large heart and he embraced all religions. But for Wayne, I felt in some ways he always needed that validation. And so when Cardinal George, was able to receive his vows, there's a canonical status now within the church that allows individuals, to be recognized, as a hermit, as a monk in the world. And so when Wayne had this opportunity, it was such a blessing. And so prior to that, the week before, he came to Italy. I met him in Rome, and we went to Assisi. St. Francis, as you know, was his favorite saint. And I believe, that Wayne's heart, was indeed Franciscan and is very much as large as Francis. There's an account where Francis's remains were exhumed back in the 1980s, and he was a very small man, probably about 4 feet tall. But the physicians determined that he had an extremely large heart. And so when I, knew that and read about that, and I says, this is indeed Wayne too. I mean, Wayne's heart was very large, encompassed so many people, and all over the world, and no matter who he met, he embraced them with God's love.
It meant a lot to him to be with family. And Jonathan and I were talking, the world was his family. He really did embrace the world.
I should say that we've been emphasizing his wonderful, incredible personal qualities, and I just want to say what an incredible, consummate scholar he was.
Went in 1987 to be with Father Bede, and I had the good fortune to go there in '88, and it was a wonderful place because for Wayne, there again, he was at the feet of a great master, Father Bede, learned so much, and then obviously when Wayne received sannyasi from Father Bede, which was a culmination for him with having a renunciation, of material goods, and so anyways, when Wayne was there, he was a lot of fun too, and Russell Paul, who was a monk there at the time, and he met Asha there and they eventually married, and so Wayne became very good friends with Russell and Asha and did some great work with them.
This little memory is from his earlier years. One of his friends from the East Coast called me sort of out of nowhere after he died, and I had not known him. And this was somebody that knew Wayne just as he went into the monastery, and as he told me, was banned by Uncle John from seeing Wayne because they used to cut up too much and run around too much and drink too much. And so the memory that he told me was Wayne was first staying at a Franciscan monastery. And of course he was wearing the robes. So there he is in his Franciscan robes. And he and Richard go down to New York City on the train to run around and of course cut up. So there they were running around New York City, and they by that time had a few too many and were in the subway and got separated, and the police picked up Richard. And just as they were about to haul him off, Wayne came from the other side of the subway in his Franciscan robes. And he was as drunk as Richard. And he managed to convince the policeman that, number one, Richard was under his charge. Number two, that the reason Richard was acting so funny was that he had a mental problem. Number three, that it was Wayne's responsibility to get him back to the monastery. And number four, if they would let him go, they would just get on the train and go, which the police did. They gave him back to Wayne. So he also had the incredible gift of persuasion, and that lasted all of his life.
Including his last moments. And at this hour, I will share his last words with you. I think I'm going to go take a little nap. That's the truth. So have a great night.
There's one thing that I would like to share, since there's been so much shared about Brother Wayne, and that is a few things that happened at his funeral. How a person dies and the things that happens, in the few short days afterwards, many times is reflective of that person in their life. And it turns out, of course, Brother Wayne had cancer. They found out the day that he died, they got the report back, and the cancer was actually gone. And he didn't die from cancer after all. It was a complication from the treatment, and his artery burst. And the posture that he was in when he died was the posture of the Buddha, sleeping peacefully on his hands, like that, which is a beautiful image to remember Wayne by. The other thing is that his funeral was really quite amazing. The day of his funeral, it was very dark, and it was raining sheets of rain, blinding rainstorm. And as we went down to the cathedral where the funeral was being held, just when we got to the cathedral, a homeless man jumped out right in front of our car. And we almost hit him right there. And we saw that as a sign, because Wayne was such a friend of homeless people, and he knew many of them by name. And so we went into the service, and it was an amazing service of many, many people from different traditions, and many homeless people that you could see on the way out. So many people that he touched in so many different ways. And as we proceeded off to the cemetery, the rain had stopped. And when we got to the cemetery, there was a memorial there, and then everybody kind of departed. And it was a small group of people that were invited to his graveside, and ultimately the lowering of his casket. So as the casket was being lowered, sky still dark from the rain, the casket slowly touches the ground. And immediately when that casket touched the ground, the sky opened up behind, and a shaft of light came down and illuminated everyone in that circle. And we stand in absolute amazement. And the wind was coming from every direction. It was everywhere. And as I stood there feeling the presence of this great soul, I started to look around, because I don't know why, but I had a funny feeling that I would see him like peeking out from behind one of the tombstones or something like that. Of course, I never did, but I just wanted to share this amazing story about the funeral of this man, and I have no doubt that history will reflect upon his soul in amazement that such a man's feet ever touched the earth.
On one of my last visits in Chicago to Wayne, his last round of chemo, I asked him, Wayne, is there a core teaching you want to share? And he paused, and he thought. And then he indicated he'd want some paper, so I knew this was for real. So he took the paper, he took a pen, and he wrote these words. The divine is infinite sensitivity. The divine is infinite sensitivity. That's it. What are you going to say? You know, I want to take a moment just to acknowledge and to appreciate the Becks. You know, really. Woo, woo, woo! Yes! Yeah! You know, as I mentioned, Wayne said to me, you know, you got to meet the Becks. They get it. They understand the vision. They grok it. Plus, these are people that get things done. So really, we're going to focus now on vision in action, receiving and offering. So you're going to introduce Betty Sue. Well, Betty Sue is going to lead us in this discussion.
Betty Sue is the executive director of the Lyndon Baines Johnson Library. She has, I truly like that term, Renaissance woman, because you are so involved in so many things. A poet, and has written some beautiful poems, and wants to perform in a poetry slam, I think. A writer, and has participated with some wonderful people in writing books that touch all of our hearts. Synchronicity, Presence. Collaborating with Bill Moyers on some of his documentaries, the most powerful having been The Power of Myth with Joseph Campbell, a teacher at the University of Texas in one of their leading unique advanced programs, and someone who teaches interspiritual faith, interspiritual dialogue. We are blessed to have her here with us. So, Betty Sue.
I want to begin because a word has been used a lot, grace. And we are going to be depending on grace, which we can, for the work in these groups, because there is so little time. I'm glad that word came up. Even in the yoga, it came up, because it's the essence of Southern religion, which is the one religion I haven't heard spoken of here. A Southern religion has to do with grits. I have a good Yankee friend who came down and he ordered breakfast, eggs, bacon. He got the breakfast and along came the grits. And he called the waitress and said, you know, I didn't order these grits. And she leaned down, she said, honey, you don't order grits. Grits comes. That's Southern religion. So under the principle that grace comes, and I think the reason I was chosen to introduce this part is that the action world, I'm in so many different action worlds and have failed in so many of them that I have lots of experience in the hard level of material that appears to block so many efforts. That is, when spiritual people are up with the divine, it seems so light and easy and full of grace. And then as you move down into the levels of the material and something needs to happen in the world, it seems slower. And sometimes we lose patience. And one of the things I honor the Becks for is that they have actually brought forth a vision that came through prayer into this, getting the plumbing working. Let me tell you, that is really a challenge. Bringing something forth in the material world challenges spiritual people very, very deeply. But I think that's one of the things we're called to in this era, is the strengthening of relationships so that they continue and create fruit in the world. The people here are extraordinary. So let me send you off then with a reading from Martin Buber, who's a forerunner of this work in some ways with his notion of I and thou. The free man is he who wills without arbitrary self-will. He believes in destiny and believes that it stands in need of him, yet does not know where it's to be found. But he knows that he must go out with his whole being. The matter will not turn out according to his decision. But what is to come will come only when he decides on what he is able to will. He must sacrifice his puny, unfree will, which is controlled by things and instincts, to his grand will, which quits defined for destined being. Which quits defined, your personality, how people think of you, which quits defined for destined being.
So I was staying in an ashram in India for a couple of weeks, and I used to walk into the village near the ashram every afternoon. And it took about a week, but there was a woman from the village who spoke English, and we struck up a conversation one day. She'd kind of been watching me and been noticing her. And I was wearing actually this jewelry. This is my grandmother's diamond. And they were so poor. And the thought flashed through my mind, I could sell my grandmother's ring and probably feed this whole village for 6 months. And just as I was having that thought, she came over and she said, I've been wanting to talk to someone from America. She says, you're an American, is that right? And I said, yes. And she actually, tears came to her eyes. And she said, I want you to know that we in this village pray for you. And, apparently they had had some experience with Americans coming to the ashram. I said, really? That's wonderful. And she said, yes, but I want to check some things with you. And she asked me questions. She said, is it true that you can live in a big apartment building and not know your neighbors? And I said, oh, yes, that's definitely true. She said, is it true that often both the mother and the father work and children are left in institutions with strangers? And I said, my own children went to daycare, it's true. She said, is it true that when your parents and your grandparents get old, they don't necessarily live with you? And I thought of my own mother, who actually had requested to go at one point to a nursing home and then to stay in her own home. And I said, well, yes, that's true. And she began, tears were pouring down her face. And she said, your culture is materially rich but spiritually poor, and that's why we pray for you. And I think in a way what she was saying is, in some ways we were a civilization that had lost its heart, and their civilization rooted in the heart. Now the best of all possible worlds would be that they had some more money. It's not a good thing when you're in poverty. But this is an example of how cultures need to learn from one another. Because to be in a rich nation but to be spiritually poor, that suffering is just as great as the suffering of poverty. It's a poverty of spirit.
What a workshop we've been having, huh? What a workshop. Moving from our personal mystical core, our personal connection with the divine, to small groups, to the whole collective. And today, we have a short time left, and we really need to take what we're learning about ourselves and the people in the room outside of the room into the world. And I want to introduce Kurt Johnson, who is from New York and part of the Interspiritual Dialogue group in New York. And he will be sharing experiences with Wayne. And I think it's that summary and focus of moving out, of moving into action. Kurt?
What Wayne said, I'll say two things. And as Gorakh knows, there's a bench in Prospect Park in Brooklyn across from my house where Wayne and I used to talk. And anybody who comes to Brooklyn, I'm happy to take them to the bench and they can soak for a while, surf the space, as they say with Wayne. But he used to tell me, Kurt, he said, people only, it's like an iceberg, he said, people only see externally what's going on the surface. But he said what's going on underneath here, in the sense of what God or the totality really wants to do, is something that is huge. It's huge, and it has to do with this deeper understanding of the kind of dialogue that we can have and that we can share and that we can begin. And what that went back to was his belief that the friendships that are developed in the core of the heart, in the core of mystical experience, are so compelling that they themselves are the motor that can move this thing along.
It would be interesting to come back here in 2 years and to see how you might have inspired one another, because we never know. Gordy had not met Wayne. He met Wayne just once, which was at the Vancouver conference, which will be 2 years in April. I knew Wayne before, but not well. The kind of person you meet with at a conference, you sit with, but not a personal friend. And yet, there was a vision cooking in me for a lot of years about training people to do what those of you who are Catholic might recognize as spiritual direction. I, in a hospital setting, thought of as spiritual mentoring, where people were really ill and facing those big questions of what's the meaning of success, what am I doing here, am I just this body, is there something more? And I had no training in that. You go to training, I'm a scientist, I'm a cancer cell biologist. There wasn't a spiritual direction unit in our graduate program. But that is largely what I did. That's what people asked of me. And when Gordy met Wayne, he became on fire with Wayne's spirit, his simplicity, his joy, his heart, and then this idea of interspirituality.
Now it is time for our closing ceremony, so we'll turn it over to Oscar.
Oscar has invited me to read some words from Wayne. It's actually the last paragraph of Mystic Heart. Spirituality, finally, is awareness and sensitivity. And sensitivity is itself awareness in action. It is this quality that we most require in our time and in the ages to come. But it is a quality we find only in the mystic heart, in the steady cultivation of compassion and love that risks all for the sake of others. It is these resources that we desperately need as we build the civilization with a heart. A universal society capable of embracing all that is, putting it to service in the transformation of the world. May the mystics lead the way to this rebirth of the human community that will harmonize itself with the cosmos and finally make peace with all beings.
So there's been a beautiful ebb and flow between the inner, the outer, the self, the circle, the above, the below, the individual, the collective, and humankind and our beloved Earth Mother. Yet it is in the pause between the breaths that the power lies. Because truly to be able to work in the earth-honoring traditions of our peoples and have a concrete influence in the transformation of global consciousness at large, it involves restoring oneself to a state of consciousness, which is part of the living earth, feeling the anima mundi. May the seven sacred winds, the four directions, and all our relatives accompany you in your journey of service into the ever now.
I was very touched by the people who came to the conference and found myself in tears many times by just the feeling of tremendous longing that people have in their hearts to serve and to really offer their highest selves to the world and to the mission of peace and bringing us all together. It was very, very beautiful. And I felt great faith and great trust, and this has something to do with Wayne too, because it was kind of a message of, don't worry, I've got it covered. In terms of the work that's going to grow out of this conference, we didn't end knowing that what a lot of that work was going to be for the participants. But what was clear is that work will emerge, work that supports the world. The activism is there, the desire to move from the etheric and the spiritual world into manifestation and supporting people was so strong for everyone.
Basically, I'd really want to thank Wayne. And this is really what I hoped would come, that after the conference, people just wouldn't go home and have nice memories, but that they would be inspired, because that was Wayne's vision, people coming together to do the work of spirit. And that the most important thing was people had to become real friends, and that they had to really care about each other. They really needed to be able to understand each other, their visions, and find a way to really make that happen. So it really was a wonderful opportunity, I felt, this weekend to work on your dream, to get clear about the action steps to realize it, and then not only to find a whole group energy that vibed with it, but then to make a one-on-one connection with someone else whose actual role was to really foster the unfoldment of that. So it really felt like the vision came into manifestation. I'm very, very hopeful, because I felt like this vision that I and others had held for the conference actually happened. So it's proof that that vision can become operational.
May joy be with you and with you. May joy be with you.
I guess what I would leave people with is this. For a number of years, I worked mostly with people who were dying. At the beginning of the AIDS epidemic, before we even knew that there was a virus called HIV, I was sitting with people, maybe 3 or 4 people would die every week who I had become friends with. They all would say to me exactly the same thing, and that is, at the end of your life, what you look back on is just one thing, and that's the quality of your relationships. You look back, and what has made a difference are the people who've touched your heart, the people whose heart you've touched, and what you have learned from one another. So the most important thing is that we learn how to love ourselves and other people.
What we say in Arabic is, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, in the name of Allah, the most beneficent, the most merciful. May all of our dreams, with His grace, come true, inshallah, which means with Allah's will.
May love be with you, and with you. Ooh, we send love to all of our brothers and sisters. Giving thanks for this day.
Thank you for your courage, and I am so happy to be in this world with all of you. It's the greatest gift.
and I so feel my heart connection to you, and I look forward to seeing you all again.
And we go to bed knowing that tomorrow is another sacred day.
I would want to say, thank you, Wayne. You helped make this so easy and so enjoyable, even though I'm not good with details. And not that he was, but just gratitude, because I constantly felt his presence and his support. And I really, Wayne, I'm just really happy that the seeds that you planted are starting to grow, and that with your continuing presence and love and faith and your connections up there, this really will flower into something way beyond what we can see now. I really feel that Wayne is really pleased. He's really happy. I mean, there was a lot of laughter as well as a lot of serious intention and play. Every once in a while, I would get a message from Wayne. I mean, it sounds weird, but I just know that would feel his presence, and then he would oftentimes communicate to me in words. And once, when I was starting to feel somewhat anxious about some unfolding, I heard him just say, "Keep it light, Bill. Keep it light." And you know how these things work when you're helping to orchestrate something. Always there are these last-minute details. They're always so and so doesn't have their plane ticket. I mean, talks are going way longer than they're supposed to go. And so it was just like, it was such a blessing to be able to remember, take it light, Phil, take it light. And I think the larger teaching is, just trust grace. Just trust grace. I don't have to micromanage everything. It'll just happen if I just trust and put my heart into it and really believe in this dream, which is really, again, the unfoldment of world dream.
And we leave here in love and gratitude. May love be.
He felt that the friendships that could arise between people in that connection could be a driving force itself beyond the power of organization or money. And when I asked him once, when he was talking about this, and I said, Wayne, how can this really happen? And he said something that's actually quite profound. He said, we have to expect that extraordinary people will come forward and establish extraordinary relationships. So that really is the story behind Common Ground and what's been happening now.
May love be with you and with you. May love be with you and with you.
As a mother nourishes and cherishes her children according to the flesh, how much more ought we to nourish and cherish our brothers and sisters according to the Spirit?
Keep it light, Phil. Keep it light.